Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Monster Hunter World Iceborne livestream. We're back on the Xbox, and I have no clue what I want to do right now. I thought about actually gathering the weapon popularity data while we were live, because that doesn't require a lot of work. Well, it does, but it doesn't really require me to play the game, which means I could read your comments and I could gather the information. It's time for the weapon popularity stats, isn't it? So maybe we'll work on that for a little while, and then maybe we'll do some fights. We'll do that. We need to do that for all three consoles, and then once we have it for all three consoles, we'll make the weapon popularity video. So we're at the very beginning of the stream, and if I start loading my game now, maybe I will get lucky and run into the, what's his name? Let's see. I like to check Elder's Recess. Let's go there. Are you going to do Safi with the subscribers? Ooh, I could do Safi'jiiva with subscribers. I absolutely loathe fighting. He's so boring. I've fought him so much already. I have a number of his weapons. He's just not an exciting fight. I like Kulve Taroth. I'm thinking what I would like to do is help players with whatever they're stuck on. But a Safi'jiiva lobby, man, it's not even as fun as old Kulve Taroth from the base game. Real slow, real boring. I'll think about it. Maybe you can talk me into it. How is it going, everybody? What day is it, by the way? Is it Wednesday? It's Thursday. Damn, the time goes by so fast. It's because I play video games all day long. I have no clue what's ever going on. I just play video games. I got it easy. You guys are all out there working, essential workers. I'm in here playing my video games. How's it going, David? Reckless Maniac says, help you out. DBS is number 6. Brian says, thank you, Reckless. Brian says, nasty Electron is delayed due to coronavirus. Sir Lazy? TGC, what do you do after having 3 children? Get rich and retire and go on a vacation to Europe and realize that Europe has more culture than the United States. That's what you do. Alright, let's check for the first Wyverian. How's it going, Jordan? He says, hey, TGC. Hey, mister. How's it going, man? Alright, we don't have him up there. Check over here real fast. Is my wire stuck? Can we do Safi later? Probably not. I'm not a fan of Safi'jiiva. I really am not a big fan of Safi'jiiva. What's up with the screen? What do you mean, what's up with the screen? Oh, the screen was adjusted. I forgot about this, actually. Hold on. Let me see if I can fix that. Thank you for pointing that out. So, I should be able to go to Configure Video. Click Defaults. Whoa, 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 whoa. What was that? Alright. That still does not look normal. Is it still, Oh, that's no good. That's no good. I might have just broken it. Oh, here we go. We need to be pulling from the hopodge. Alright, try that again. Oh my god. Hey, there we go. But it's still not fitting to the screen properly. Make sure that's working. Okay, good. Still not fitting to the screen properly. Oh, yes it is. Yes it is. There it goes. Well, no, not according to... How do I adjust this? Huh, it's like it doesn't let me configure video right now. I think what I have to do to fix it, I think I have to stop streaming. So what's going on here is the video is stretched. And the reason it's stretched was for when I was playing Pokemon Blue, I stretched it to make it look better. Configure video. Yeah, it won't let me do it. It's probably because I'm actually already live. That's probably why I can't adjust it. We'll get it later. I don't think it affects the game too much. I think the game still looks pretty watchable. But I'll remember that for next time, because we're pretty much done with our Pokemon Blue playthrough, the last thing we can do is go and catch Mewtwo, but I don't know if I'm going to bother with catching Mewtwo. I mean, we could capture Mewtwo and all the legendary birds. That's what we can... Oops. That's what we can do. Can you show some Charge Blade gameplay? That is possible. It is possible for me to do that. Alright, we're jumping up to the Coral Highlands. Can you please show some Charge Blade gameplay? A stream at a reasonable time? You're not GE, who are you? Thanks, man. I'm going to try and get 3 live streams done today, just like I did yesterday. Man, I was tired by the end of the day. Felt like my brain was boiled. But, that's okay. Trying to get lots of work done, trying to get those overtime hours. And Angkor says, what do you think about the next stimulus package for Americans? How are we going to pay for that? Oh man. There was a point where I had a bunch of money in the stock market after the stock market initially fell, I bought oil stock and I bought Google stock. And then there was a rally after the first stimulus package. There was a rally, and I kind of sat around kind of observing the news and the world and the stock market. And what I've done recently in the last week, I sold off all my stock. I actually made some money. It's kind of funny. But I sold off all my stock because my prediction is that the stock market is nowhere near done falling, done crashing. And I think that with the stimulus package, the problem is this. You can't just print money. Everyone knows this. You can't just print money. And for those of you who don't understand why, it's pretty simple. Money is just this thing we use to trade with, and there's a certain amount of it in circulation. There's a certain amount of money in existence. And when you print more of it, it's all worth less money, right? And so what the U.S. does when it wants to make money is basically it sells bonds for money is what it does. That's what the United States government does. The United States government says, I'll go into debt. Please buy my bond. And when you buy it, I'll take your cash and then I'll redistribute it to the people. So what ends up happening is countries outside of the United States buy the bond. And when we can't sell it to outside countries, we have to sell it to a big bank called the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is like the bank's bank. You see what I'm saying? It's like the bank. It's the government's bank. The government doesn't technically own it, but kind of it does, in a way. So the Federal Reserve buys America's debt, and the problem is, increasingly, the Federal Reserve is buying more and more of the ratio of the debt because other countries don't want it as much. And this is a really bad situation when that happens, because when nobody wants our currency anymore, and we're no longer like the standard currency that you could store, it's a good store of value. What happens is you'll experience really bad inflation if that happens. And so I don't know if this whole coronavirus pandemic will really cause anything like hyperinflation, but most likely, yeah, you will see some inflation and your purchasing power with your dollars will go down. And now would probably be a good time to buy gold. Although I don't know, maybe gold has already moved up in price a lot. Play more with Charge Blade and GP will come naturally. How much is the next check? Oh, I have no clue. But yeah, so with everyone being paid to stay at home, the problem with being paid to stay at home is that nothing was done. There was no productivity. Real money comes from productivity. You have to understand that. That's why the government can't just print money. Real money comes from productivity. When you create a good, you have now created value. When a government just prints off $1 trillion bill and says this has value, what's really occurred is the government has stolen value from everyone else. That's what's actually happened. So the government's currently doing that and then kind of giving it back to you. They're like, yeah, we'll just put it back in the system. But those dollars never return is what happens. It's kind of like if you had a bunch of homeless people and then you took $100 bills out of your wallet, gave it to all the homeless people so that they could go eat at your restaurant. You're like, we'll just get the money moving.
Another donation to add on top of my previous one on the Pokemon channel.
Woo! What?
So that you may hunt Safi with a GS and a bow lol.
A great sword, a GS and a bow. We'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, it's like if you give $100 to all the homeless people, and tell them to go eat at your restaurant, and you're like, well, just get that money moving all over the place because it's good. It's get the economy going, right? They spend the money at your restaurant, and then you start counting up the money. You're like, look at all the money I made. Well, that was your money. You didn't actually make any money. What happened was you did lose your food that you gave them when they ate. So you just lost money. You didn't actually make any money. And that's kind of a good analogy of what's happening right now. When the government just prints money, oh, it's good, it's good, it's good. It's not that good. And if you do it for too much and for too long and people aren't productive again, you're going to experience a depression is what's going to happen. Gold mine is where you get the monies. What is worse, giving Americans stimulus checks or freezing rent payments, card payments, bills, etc.? I don't know which one is worse. I'm sure they're both bad. They're both bad. Slowsty says the good thing about Corona is that it's a global thing, meaning all countries suffer, in turn making it no country ever really falls behind, so USD will stay valuable. Yeah, that's not really true, though. That's not really how it works. It's kind of like saying, we're all sick, therefore we're all equally poor. That's kind of what you've just said, Celeste. So it's a very bad thing. And the fact that your neighbor is poor doesn't improve your situation. What it does is it means your neighbor's not buying anything from you either. So it's actually much worse than if your neighbor was healthy. If your neighbor was healthy, they would still be buying your stuff because they have money. So when everyone's incapable of buying from each other, it's very bad. All productivity is dropped. Basically, your quality of living should fall. That's what should happen because nobody is being productive right now. This is especially true, by the way, for poor countries that were already kind of on the edge of struggling with starvation and homelessness. They don't really have a big social net. Those countries are really going to see a lot of people suffer and die from not having the money that's necessary to survive. Bring back toilet emote. I wonder if I can do that in the live stream. Here, let me see if I can do it in the middle of the live stream, because I actually won't remember otherwise. Let's see. Channel. How do I add emojis? I might be able to do it in the middle of the live stream. How many members do we have? Yo, we got 80 members. Damn, that's cool. Your emojis. All right, we're going over here. And can I add one? As you gain more members, you can upload and share emojis. I need 14 more members to have more emojis, so we have to give one up. I say the Corona time. I don't think anyone uses Corona time. All right, and now I'm going to go looking for the toilet emoji. There's admonishment. I have to warn you, I might not have saved the toilet one. I'm not seeing it. Let me try searching for it in my general images. It might be there, okay? I added it a long time ago. So hold on. I think it was under pee pee poo poo. Pee pee poo poo. Oh, I found it. All right, and we're going to name it... it's being named Pee Pee. Oh, apparently that's too long. We'll name it Pee Pee. Save and publish. All right, try refreshing your browser. Try refreshing your browser and see if the Pepe toilet is back. I named it Pee Pee. I refreshed mine. I'm going to try it myself. All right, and then let's see. There it is. I'll use it myself. There you go. The pee pee poo poo emoji is back. How's it going, Skylar? TGC, check player list and look at how many gold named hunters on there. Okay. Oh wow, we don't even have that many people playing. Man, people must be tired of Monster Hunter. We got Cool Steve, Twitch, Lex, Lyra, Sophia, Hale, Bridget, Stellar, Widowmaker, and D. How's it going, Shafiq? Thanks for becoming a member. Sweet. So what are we running? Oh, this is our Paralysis Insect Clay build. And I'm going to join Bridget. Let's join Bridget. New member. Thanks, man. Bro says, what are you doing? Playing Monster Hunter. What are you doing? A-Rod wants us to go fight Safi'jiiva with the bow and the greatsword, but actually I don't know if I want to do that today. Safi Poopy. I could play with the bow against maybe a different monster. Love how the conversation went from economics to pee-pee poo-poo. There you go, Twitch here. He says, Safi'jiiva, big pee-pee. That's right. Big poo-poo. That is a stinky fight. Alright, let's go ahead and play. We're going to get this. My new PC will arrive next week, then I can finally play Monster Hunter. Nice. That's fun. Weren't you supposed to play on PlayStation 4 and get your character to Master Rank 100? I'm going to be rotating through all 3 consoles. I need to have my Xbox plugged up because it's time for me to gather the data for the weapon popularity. And so I'm getting ready to gather that data and make the weapon popularity video. The bi-monthly weapon popularity video. Twitch here says, did you know that if people have premium, they can become members for a month for free? Oh, that's cool. No, I did not know that. Wait, Safi is back? I got some of the Kulturoth weapons I wanted, but FFS, after grinding to get them from Kulturoth, then having to grind the damn Guiding Lands for upgrade parts, I'm just burnt out and still need to do Guiding Lands Tempered Raging. Would you do a pinky toe cam? Yes. I have a face cam right next to me. It's my wife's face cam. She was going to do some live streaming. But I've been using it in the Pokemon Blue live streams to open up booster packs, Pokemon booster packs, in the middle of the playthrough of Pokemon. It's been really cool. It was DL and Random ECL. They both opened 2 vintage Team Rocket booster packs, and they were quite expensive. They were quite expensive. They were like $100 a pack. Ah, man. You guys think you're burnt out on this game. Just think about me. I've been playing this every single day for over 2 years, I guess. How long has it been? And I have to grind 3 characters rather than 1, meaning when you make progress on one of your characters and you feel powerful, you lose all of that because you move on to your other 2 characters. I heard GC has a foot fetish. What? Angel says, if not against Safi, then bow against Arch-Temper Nami. Excuse me, I missed out, says Elliot. Pokemans, what's the best method to up high rank and master rank? Kill monsters. Raging is the second Iceborne edition to explicitly defeat another monster. Tacos, goddamn. Meme says, man, I hope that Frozen Barrier is legit. It would be neat to see an Explore variant come to mainline. Jordan says, not only screen messes up, but where the hell is the game audio? Wait, you guys aren't getting any game audio? Oh my god, you guys aren't getting any game audio either. Oh, let me turn it up. I think that was the problem last time. Oh yeah, okay, so the game audio was also adjusted for... There we go. You should be getting some game audio now. It was adjusted for Pokemon Blue as well. Let me turn that down a little bit. Okay, let me try not to die here. Stare jerky. Alright. We will fix the screen in the near future. Apparently I can't fix it in the middle of the live stream. Easy mount. What's he gonna do? He's like bonk. Start smacking him up. What the hell? The camera's like all crazy. What the hell? Oh Oh, he's hurt. Get him, boys. Alright, he's down. Oh, snap. That was a pity. Brrr. What the hell? I think I got tricked by my own teammate. I haven't played Insect Glaive in a few days. Brrr! Paratoad equals Eater of Enders. The true Eater of Enders, Paratoad. Alright, so he's close to a mount. I would say he's 1 or 2 hits away from the next mount. Get this all sharpened. Did we dodge that roar? Another paralysis. Is he exhausted? I think he's exhausted. He looks pretty tired. Brrr. Where you going, buddy? Oh, he's gone. Let's get this sharpen going again. You said last live stream the lance should lose its shield. How about the lance lose his lance and keep his shield? That's right. Big brain right there. The best part of the lance. Is Elytron going to be a siege battle? Ooh, good question. Nobody knows. Very likely Elytron's going to be similar to the Behemoth. That's what I believe. Ow. Ow. Did somebody already get the second mount? I feel like somebody already got the second mount. Did somebody get the other mount when I wasn't watching? Oh, he's trying to get away now. Look at him. Somebody must have gotten the other mount earlier, because we definitely should have already mounted him a second time. Oops. I did not realize. Oh, Bridget says second mount was me. Oh, I didn't even see that. I was like, where's the other mount? Got this rock steady. We weren't even using our mantles. Oh my god. Can we get a third mount? Not worth our time? I feel like we could get a third paralysis. Oh, there's a third mount. Oh my god, he's dead. Nice job. Celosty says Hunting Horn clears even worse than Lance, and I still love the damn thing. Actually, that's not true. Go to my video that analyzes the speedrunner tier list from Psyche and Iceborne, and you'll see that when you compile all the speedruns, the Hunting Horn is actually faster than the Lance. The Lance is the slowest weapon in the game in terms of kill times. Gameconomist, you've said Hunting Horn and Lance need improvements, but what third weapon you think needs a buff? Oh, let me think about it. I think most weapons are good. Hunting Horn and Lance really stand out as struggling. Let me think about it for a minute. I thought the Gun Lance improvements were actually pretty strong. The Sword and Shield already got a buff. It would have been Sword and Shield, but they buffed it already. Let me think. I don't know. I think they're all pretty good. I think one of the things that could happen instead of buffing a weapon, I think they should end the interactivity between spread ammo and the heavy bowgun scope, so that the scope no longer works with spread ammo, and that's what gives the spread ammo part of its huge damage buff is the actual scope, and it's the dumbest way I've ever played heavy bowgun ever. It's why you never see me use spread ammo ever. It's because I think the scope's absolutely ridiculous. However, when you use it and you don't use the scope, all you can think about is how you're supposed to use the scope. So it's like this weird messed up thing now is how it feels. It feels like broken to me. So instead of buffing another weapon, maybe nerfing the heavy bowgun spread ammo would be better. And by nerfing it, simply removing its ability to interact with the scope. But in terms of weapons that need buffing, the Lance, in my opinion, needs it bad. Like, pretty bad. The Hunting Horn, I think you drop attack up extra large off of all the Hunting Horn notes, all of it, because every time you're going to pick a Hunting Horn, the very first question you ask yourself is which one has attack up extra large. So you get rid of that, and then you just remove the self-improvement buff. It's the dumbest thing ever. Here, before you can use the Hunting Horn, you have to buff yourself. It's like, what? It's like, please. No other weapon, you know what I mean? It's very annoying, anyways. So that's my feelings on the Hunting Horn. Just boost the damage that the horn does, drop attack up extra large, drop the self-improvement buff, and maybe allow the buffs to come out the moment you go into the performance. As for a third weapon, let me look at them real fast. Hold on. Great sword's fine. Longsword, sword and shield, dual blades, hammer, hunting horn. I mean, no, that's it. It's just lance and hunting horn, I would say. Just lance and hunting horn. All the other weapons feel like they're in a good spot right now. They could receive minor adjustment balances to their damage output. But I would consider buffing lance and hunting horn in that set. And then maybe nerfing heavy bowgun spread, and maybe nerfing the bow power shot as well. Spread's ridiculous though right now. Spread's in a very ridiculous position. It's not even close. The amount of lead the spread heavy bowgun has on the other weapons is gross. Why not just remove all songs of Hunting Horn? You are making no sense. How does that not make any sense? I'm not saying that Hunting Horn shouldn't play songs. I'm saying that Attack Up Extra Large monopolizes all of the other songs. You don't use any other ones. The only one that ends up mattering is attack up extra large. And so instead of having attack up extra large monopolizing which horns you use, you should just drop it and have the horn do more damage. See? That way you can pick a horn based on what kind of songs apply to a particular fight. Attack up extra large is too useful and too generic, so you end up only using attack up extra large. When you're picking the best horn out, it's always attack up extra large. And the self-improvement buff, since it works on percentages, increasing your damage by percentages, you end up also only picking attack up extra large because of the mechanics of the self-improvement buff. So you just get rid of both of those, and all of a sudden, the different horns you can use per each fight just really opens up dramatically. You can use whichever horn you think makes the fight easier, and you will feel more uniquely useful to the fight rather than just another brawler who is bringing attack up extra large, which is the equivalent of, like eating a might seed for your team. It's so stupid. I really disagree with that design in particular on the hunting horn. Everything else about it's fine. And then you guys know my feelings on the lance. I think it's ironically not very good at survivability. Most other weapons are. I think that guarding in Monster Hunter is terrible. You have to build guard up 5. You have to build guard up. You have to build guard and guard up 5. And then even after you build that, you still take chip damage. You still get some knockback versus some moves. Not all moves, but it ironically stops you from being able to build other defensive skills. Twitch says, no, he makes sense. If you don't have attack up large, that horn isn't good at all. Exactly. It monopolizes all other songs. There's only a very select niche horns that don't need extra large via elemental. I'm not doing YouTube professionally yet. I'm not using it to get money, but maybe in the future. Sloshy says, attack up extra large is only a must for solo hunts. In 4-player hunts, other song lists can be better. No, that's not true, Slosty. So you have a misunderstanding of attack up extra large. It's not only required for solo play, it's required in multiplayer play because you get multiplicative buffs from the attack up extra large, meaning that now you take the initial damage increase and you multiply it by all your teammates. So you're multiplying it rather than by 1 or whatever, you're multiplying it by everyone by 4. So it's even more important in multiplayer, not less important, even more important in multiplayer. Achy breaky heart, I'll join him. Daniel says, made it home in time for the stream. It's Xbox. Me neither, more subs and content. I'd prefer if Hunting Horn can apply its buff without having to do the whole performance animation. Yeah, so one of the things I would like to see on the Hunting Horn, which I think would dramatically change it, is if the buff came out the moment you hit the performance button. Okay, so you see what I'm saying? So the moment you hit the performance button, the buff comes out. However, it can then lock you into the performance, and you will have to wait for the animation recovery frames to end. But having it come out halfway through the animation, really it makes it similar to Clutch Claw in the way that you're just kind of hoping in a lot of cases that the monster doesn't do anything while you're performing. And this is a very annoying way to play the weapon. Dax, thank you so much, man. He says, hey man, keep up the amazing work. Is the session full? It might be full. Let's see. We just started about 30 minutes ago. There is some room if you'd like to join. We got Sophia. We got to help Sophia for sure. Horn really is fine. It's not the game's fault that people prefer DPS over utility. I mean, I think that that's kind of an odd sort of way to think of it. I judge things based on fun. Fun is more of a, is more of a subjective experience. But if most of the community is deciding that dealing damage is fun, which makes sense, this is a game where you kill monsters, then you need to have enough damage that at least you're balanced with the other weapons. See what I'm saying? When somebody asks for a damage buff, they're not asking to be more powerful than the other weapons. They're asking to be balanced with the other weapons. And what would be so bad about it? This isn't even a competitive game. You don't go into multiplayer and go, hey, the hunting horn buffs makes my weapon more OP than ever, and everyone's going to use it now. It's really not like that. People just, wanting your weapon to do roughly the same amount of damage as a different weapon, that's fair game in my opinion. Deadly's says, oh, Deadly, thanks for becoming a member, man. Woo! Another member, 2 members today. Crazy. Well, it says 30-minute hunts are no fun. Well, yeah, see, so exactly. So you need to do enough damage that you feel like your weapon is not taking 30 minutes to finish the fight, as opposed to simply swapping over to the greatsword and finishing it in maybe half the time. And when you look at the speedrun, when you look at the actual compilation of speedrun times, you see that the hunting horn's taking roughly twice as long as some of the other weapons at the upper end of the tier list, the faster end of the tier list. So when you see that, you realize, wow, I could just be going twice as fast if I did nothing but simply change my weapon over to a very similar weapon, by the way. The greatsword is a raw damage weapon. It's a raw damage weapon with, what do we know? It's a raw damage weapon with slower attack animations. That sounds a lot like the hunting horn. So what was the benefit of using the hunting horn? Well, I gave my teammates a buff. Yeah, but that doesn't really matter. All that really matters is total damage. So if your total damage ends up being the same as what you got with the greatsword, then really you just kind of gave up power to play this specific weapon over another. It ends up not being very distinct. You see what I'm saying? It ends up not being very distinct. You think that the hunting horn's distinct, but you use it actually surprisingly just like you might use the greatsword. Buff slicing shot again and make it stagger people. You monster! Let's see if we can get the mount next. Actually, now's a terrible time for a mount. Uh-oh. Woo! Really? We bounced off the tail? Wow, we were really missing our aerials here. Okay, we've grabbed him. Is there such a thing as a hard mushroom master jewel? I don't think so. And he staggered. And he's down. I like how he's not softened anywhere, and that's because we all have light weapons and none of us want to do the work of actually softening him. Shows you how much people actually do not like the clutch claw. You know nobody likes it when nobody wants to use it. How did it get orange? Hunting horn is viable. Beat the entire game off of it either. Yeah, all the weapons are viable. The lance is viable. This is a common misunderstanding. When I say, hey, let's buff the lance, people think that I'm claiming that the lance is not capable of killing a monster. It's perfectly capable of killing a monster. I'm asking for balance. I'm asking for it to do roughly what the other weapons can do. And to me, it's always surprising that people find that offensive. How can you find it offensive to do as much damage as the other weapons? No, I want my weapon to do less damage than the other weapons. And to me, that's just crazy talk. Like, why? But why? People get offended at the idea that their weapon needs a buff. You know what I mean? Hunting horn's perfectly viable. Yeah, that's actually the same language people were using about the lance when I was like, the lance should have a buff. Whoa! What is going on over here? Deadlies.
Finally got into MHW after barely making it past the first few monsters when
Woo!
it first came. Ow, glad I did. Watching your streams made me want to play and have been having a lot of fun since.
Wow, this episode brought to you by Deadlies. Thank you so much, man. That's a very generous donation. Holy smokes. Big donation time, huh? Thank you very much, and I'm glad you're having a good time. We're all waiting. It's a good time to be getting into Monster Hunter because you got a lot of time to try and catch up before the release of what's probably going to be like the crown jewel of Iceborne. I'm assuming it's going to be Elytron. Elytron, if he's like Behemoth, he's probably going to be one of the most fun and most challenging fights in the game. So now's a good time to try and get powerful before he pops out. And one of the videos I was thinking about making was a video that reviews all of the armor in the game in Iceborne so far, because it's such a good time to get that done. you know, with the Latron delayed and with there being so many armor sets to go after. But I started working on it today, and man, I'm just such a busy bee between my 2 channels. It's hard for me to get it all done. So I decided I'd go live and talk with you guys and play, just play the game. Just enjoy playing the game. TGC, it's your day, says David Dubuque. Yeah, big donation. Thank you so much, man. I like the weapon designs in the older game more than I do in World. I feel like the weapon designs in the older games were like more fantastic, more mystical, more, I don't want to say cartoony, but they could actually sometimes be cartoony, but they were just like, they're more dramatic. How about that? And the weapons in here look, I want to say they're more on the realistic side. You know what I mean? It's like, actually, this weapon is just made out of steel, and we taped feathers to it. You know what I mean? And it's like, yeah, that's probably how it would go in the real world. You wouldn't actually make a weapon out of parts from a monster, unless it's like really specific things that you did, like maybe making a hammer out of a skull, which even that's pretty crazy in the real world. But it's worked against them. My favorite weapon so far in Iceborne has been the Guild Palace weapons. I think those were really crazy good designs. Something you would expect to run into in some other games probably as well. Is he going to sleep? God, I can't attack. Throw him into the wall. You gonna get mad. TGC is your day. Ooh, I see it's a shame just started Monster Hunter. Don't have Iceborne yet, but I love how Behemoth set looks. The Behemoth set, you can, you know, they haven't updated the Behemoth set for Master Rank, and it's a good question if they're going to. Let's get down there. Make Lance great again. How dare you speak bad about the Lance? I've never been called so many bad things after saying that the Lance is bad at defense, which, ironically, I'm completely not convinced that I was wrong about that either, because none of the arguments I heard made me feel like the Lance can counterguard. It's like, yeah, I know the Lance can counterguard. I'm very aware. None of the arguments I heard actually changed my mind. The Lance is really good at mobility. Actually, I think that the Lance is probably the second worst weapon at mobility. Iceborne introduced more variant subspecies than nominates. Spartan says, do I get Affinity 4 on my Safi'jiiva? No, you don't want to go Affinity at all, and that's because Affinity is so easy to build for in Monster Hunter World Iceborne. So mostly what you do is you just go attack. He about to smack me. Oh, and he did. Does the smack come like a second later? I don't understand. How do I avoid it? It's weird. It felt like I timed it pretty well. Terraria says, Godtear Boy says, 2 more days until Terraria 1.4. Oh yeah, we gonna play Terraria 1.4 on this channel? I haven't played Terraria in a long time. I don't even remember how to play Terraria, to be honest. Lance is fun, but it does feel bad to use sometimes. Yeah, that's the other thing. So the Lance is actually, on one console, it is the least used weapon in the game. On another console, the other 2 consoles, it's the second least used weapon in the game. And so I come in and I say, okay, here's maybe this thing that's wrong with it. It's not actually very good at defense. Here's my reasoning. And people act like, wow, I'm the biggest egotistical, misinformation, evil bad guy they've ever heard of. It's crazy. It's crazy the level of toxicness that came out of that. Arson says, Lance is like dancing with the fat chick. Need to be a hand with delicacy or you will get hurt. Oh my god. I'll carry you on Terraria. Is farming Safi still worth it, or are Kulftaroth Master Rank weapons better completely? No, they're not better completely. They're not. They're better in certain cases, like certain elemental cases. I saw your lance video and I agree. It can use a lot of help to catch up with the other weapons. I know, right? I think one of the point that I started to realize that lance isn't very good at defense was when when we would fight something difficult, like let's say Clove Tarot, and then I would open up my chest box and I got all 14 weapon classes in there. And I go, which weapon's going to help me survive and do well against Clove? And I realized at the time that it's not, my first choice was not lance. And then I'm like, okay, so lance isn't my first choice for defense. What is it my first choice for then? Well, definitely not offense either. How about utility? No, not that either. You actually, if you wanted to add some cool stuff to your team, maybe you would play Hunting Horn. Maybe Hunting Horn wide range. But not the lance. You wouldn't play lance. What does the lance actually do? Oh, well, it can counterguard. What does that matter, man? It doesn't actually matter. If you're doing total less damage and you're not and your total survivability is lower, what does it matter that you have a counterguard? The sword, not the sword and shield, the longsword has a counterattack, and you actually do play the longsword because it's actually a fairly strong weapon. Ranks around to the middle of the speedrunner tier list, right? So then I'm like, let's get a buff for the lance. And people are like, wow, this guy's crazy. I have a theory actually after all of I have a theory after all of the fallout from the video. I have a theory that when you take maybe like one of the least popular weapons and you talk trash on it, that people get extremely defensive and extremely, what's the word I'm looking for? I mentioned it in the other stream, yesterday's stream. The word I'm looking for is almost like an inferiority complex. Do you see what I'm saying? It's almost like an inferiority complex because it's like they're so mad about something that's probably true about their weapon that they have to become more aggressive about it than what's really necessary. You could have just said, no, I think that the lance is defensive. You can make that claim, but the level of anger, I can only think that would come from somebody who's compensating from something. Thank God I actually do. Oops, hold on. Okay, what the heck? Wow, they do not make it easier to moderate. They do not make it easy to moderate your own channel. All right, there we go. Okay, here we go. Shogun says, you're very good at articulating yourself. Really? Because I feel like I stumble over my words the whole time. I sit here going, what's the word? What weapons do you think are meta? Oh, okay, so if you want to talk about what weapons I think are actually playing the best, so it depends on if you're soloing, if you're playing with multiplayer, but if you're playing solo, it's going to be all the bowguns. You're going to have spread ammo, heavy bowgun, elemental ammo, light bowgun, and with the bow, you just use whatever bow is strongest against a particular monster you're fighting, and you're going to use you're right, you're just going to use the bow like you normally would. The power shot on the bow mimics the spread shot on the heavy bowgun, basically. Alright, we're alive. Right? Yeah, we're fine. So, spread ammo and power shot are just doing crazy good damage right now, and the light bowgun has some advantages as well with its elemental ammo. So those weapons are doing just a terrific job right now. The other one I would say, if you want to talk about just in general in multiplayer, dual blades and the greatsword. Dual blades and the greatsword appear to be doing better than other weapons. So if you want to talk about actual damage output and play times, I'm going to guess that you should probably be using those two weapons. Greatsword, dual blade. But all the weapons are viable, including the lance, including the hunting horn. Including the lance and including the hunting horn. They're all viable. You can play whatever you want. If you're having fun with the lance, go play the lance. But I'm still going to say that I'd like to see Capcom buff it the way they buff Sword and Shield. That's the other thing that always really surprises me over the whole controversy from that one video, like how freaked out people got over it. It's like, you realize they just buffed the Sword and Shield, right? The Sword and Shield, which was probably already in a better position than the Lance in the first place, got a buff. And I'm asking for a buff for the Lance that got nothing but the Counter Claw in Iceborne. Think about it, Sword and Shield, what did it get? It got the Perfect Rush. It got Perfect Rush. It got an actual mechanically, satisfying and significantly changing to the moveset move. Right? That that was what Perfect Rush was. It was an actual significant change to the Sword and Shield. Now you question, do I do the Falling Bash or do I go into a Perfect Rush? And then after that, they buffed it. They made it more powerful. They decided that, hey, this is a light weapon, but also it's not a light weapon. Uppercut means that now you can soften in one move. Alright, and then after that, they're like, you know what, let's just make Perfect Rush really strong. Oops, he just smacked me. Oh, he's really trying to get me here. Put on this. So they did all that for the Sword and Shield, and I go, yeah, you see the Lance? The Lance is probably doing the least weapon of any weapon, but also I don't really consider it my best defensive option either. I say, let's buff this. Let's give it innate guard. Let's give it innate guard up. People act like I'm murdering children or something. What the hell? And again, I think it really just comes down to maybe like an inferiority complex. I don't know how else to describe it, to tell you the truth. Getting so upset over something like that. I've never been that mad over something. I hate this guy. It's like, oh, Jesus. GE, do an experiment where you make fun of the top-rated weapon and see how people react. Well, see, and that's why I'm saying I don't think they will react as hard, because they'll be like, nah, this weapon's pretty strong, and they don't feel the need to defend their weapon. They're like, yeah, it could probably have a nerf. How does one accumulate good decos fast? Also, what do I get about angry Lance users? Is that you're calling it for a buff, so I would think that users would agree more. Well, that's the thing. That's why I'm trying to figure out, why would somebody get offended by somebody asking to buff the weapon? And I think it has more, it's more of an emotional response than it is a responsive weapon balance. You go, hey, my weapon doesn't need a buff. My weapon's awesome. That's what it is. It's not an actual analysis of like, alright, well, what is the most defensive weapon in the game if it's not the lance? And they go, oh, maybe you can build more defensive skills on a hammer than you can on a lance, because a hammer doesn't have to build guard 5, guard up, and what's the name of it? Offensive guard. So you don't have to build any of those things. You end up, and this is another thing. I figure maybe people don't have a very strong understanding of defense in this game, because most people actually don't explore defense. You guys ever notice that? Remember the other day, I did like a week-long series of live streams where we did nothing but optimize for defense. Do you guys remember that? It was like a week-long series of live streams, and for every weapon class we were covering defensive builds. And almost nobody does this. Almost strictly, people only explore offense. People want to know, what's the meta? And when they say, what's the meta, they don't mean, how do I get more defense? They ask, how do I get more damage? And I'm one of the only people actually really exploring defense. And, you know, it's when I explored all the defensive stuff that I learned, wow, having elemental resist all the way up actually can make a large difference. You know, stacking a bunch of defensive skills can make a large difference, and the skills are more powerful than just, well, my weapon can guard, my weapon can tackle, right? Well, it turns out that's great when you execute those moves correctly, but it's actually when you make a mistake that the skills jump in and save you. You see what I'm saying here? So if you're playing a character that has stun resist and elemental resist 3, right, all 3 levels of it, and you make a mistake, you're just going to survive better compared to somebody who didn't have all that. And so you would think that a defensive weapon is maybe in its moveset, but it really is not. It turns out the thing that keeps you alive the most are your actual skills. And people scoff because they don't want to take stun resist, they don't want to take heroics, maybe they don't want to take, I don't even take fortitude. Like, look at my build, I don't even have heroics, because I assume that I'm not going to die, right? I assume I won't die, so I don't take it. Well, the thing is the reason people ignore defense is because they believe they can never make enough mistakes to die, but it happens all the time. People die all the time. So when you're actually exploring how do I max out defense, you realize the most important thing is to have all the defensive skills. The more defensive skills you have, the better you're going to stay alive. And then it turned out weapons that have a higher cost on their builds, like let's say the greatsword, for example, has to build focus, right? And actually it doesn't even have to build focus. Focus really just increases your damage output. But that's an example where you've got this additional skill on your build, and this lowers the amount of additional defensive skills you could be taking. So my realization at the time when we were working on all these defensive builds is some weapons naturally don't need any additional skills, and this gives them a large advantage in their build efficiency for having additional defensive skills. And so we take a look at the weapons: longsword, hammer, Those are two terrific weapons for defense, it turns out. And not to mention, not only do they sheath fast, not only do they have the good iframe roll, plenty of room on the build for defensive skills, but, you know, the longsword additionally has the foresight slash, which turns out to be the largest iframe move in the game, better than any roll. Almost by like double the iframes, by the way, almost by double. But not only that, when Iceborne came out, it also gained the ability to use the Spirit Slash and the EI, what was it called? EI Slash and EI Spirit Slash. And the EI Slash ends up giving it like a poise option, kind of like the tackle from the Greatsword. So it's ridiculous how defensive the longsword actually is, while still maintaining a ton of damage output when you compare it to the lance. And people call the lance like a counterattack weapon. Well, what do you think the longsword is? The longsword's a counterattack weapon too, except it's not stuck in a pigeonholed kind of spot where you're forced to guard and you're forced to build all this stupid shit like the offensive guard is one of the worst new things in the game, because basically instead of just buffing the lance to do as much damage as, let's say, the longsword, they said, here, throw this shit on your build and still do less damage. Think about that for a second. Think about how that affects defensive setups. Instead of just having the lance do as much as the longsword, which would not even be that impressive, it would just be game balance. Instead of letting the lance do as much as the longsword, they said, here, now you have to build offensive guard and still do less damage. What? That's the dumbest thing. Just balance the game, damn it. So, but those are my feelings on it, and people act like me sharing my feelings on that is misinformation. That's not misinformation. Misinformation would be as if I said something like the lance does a lot of damage. That would be true misinformation, because we have data that says that it does not. We have actual data that says it does not. I'm just talking about the actual skills in the game. That's fair. You know, it's fair to have an opinion on that. So Jim says, I don't trust myself to go full on damage. One of my friends never cares about resistance much, and he's usually the one who gets two-shotted. Yeah, two-shotting's a thing in the game. Tip says, my friend's initial reaction to Raging Bracky was, maybe I should just uninstall. Raging Bracky, he's fun. Poke, 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 that's how everyone was conceived anyways. That's true. Oron says, you don't need guard 5, lol. Yeah, I mean, I think I agree in some cases, but have you ever actually tried guarding, here's a great example, Kulve Taroth. We just got Kulve Taroth. She's one of the most difficult fights in the game right now. And have you ever tried guarding some of her lava attacks? Those actually cut through your stamina like crazy. So you can claim that you don't need guard 5, and depending on your skill level, I mostly agree with that. If you're skilled enough to just never be hit by the fire attacks, great. But the lance is designed to make it harder to get away from attacks than other weapons, precisely because the developers want you to have to guard. So the truth is, if you want to play and have a certain level of survivability, you do end up taking guard 5, which is a whole charm slot, by the way. That's expensive. TGC, I made a tip for Switch Axe next. Did you? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't even see. Okay, so A-Rod still wants the bow on Safi'jiiva. Why don't we go grab a bow real fast? Wouldn't play lance anyways, feels too stiff and clunky. Let's jump over to bow over here. All right, we're going to choose manage items. We're going to grab bow, which apparently we're out of the files. Jacob says, you told wrong information. You misrepresented the facts, and while it does need a buff, you giving your feelings doesn't help anything. So Jacob, I encourage you to talk about the misinformation I spread, okay? Because I feel like your concept of misinformation is more like, I don't agree with the Gameconomist's opinion. And when you go around disagreeing with someone's opinion, that's totally cool. But if you go around claiming that the person whose opinion you don't like, that opinion's misinformation, now you've done something a little bit different. Now you're trying to play thought police for people. You're trying to tell people how they should think, because you're basically saying, that's a lie. That's not based on facts. So you've very dramatically changed how you're presenting your disagreement. So if I was to just say, every time you disagreed with me, you're a liar and you spread misinformation, That's not so much an attack on my on your argument. That's an attack on you. See what I'm saying? It's like saying he's a child molester. Don't listen to anything he says. That's not actually a very convincing argument for whether or not the lance is defensive. See what I'm saying? So the lance in political conflict. Poke intensifies. Do you remember always having guard up or trying to master the power guard? I'm not sure what you mean by that. Gun lance is lance, but better. Change my mind. It's absolutely accurate, Axel. The gun lance with the long shelling not only reaches better than the lance, it gets better hit zones than the lance because it doesn't need to soften ever. We know using the speedrunner tier list that it's doing more damage than the lance, and because you're building explosive damage, you have a bunch of leftover skill slots for utility skills or defensive skills. And in most regards, the two weapons are quite similar to each other. Yeah, but it doesn't have the dash attack. Dash attack, by the way, is not that good, guys. If you want me to in this live stream, I'll show you why. When I would work on the lance, because obviously I've played the lance a lot, when I worked on the lance, I would talk about how good. Let's join this real fast. I would talk about how good the dash attack was, and because like everyone else, what I was really trying to do was compensate for the lance. I was trying to say the lance is awesome, because that was my job as a content creator, and now I'm being a lot more honest. And basically, the problem with the dash attack, there's a few problems. When you start the dash attack, you stand perfectly still. Everyone knows when you stand still in this game is when you get hit. Alright, so you go into this animation where you're winding up the attack and your character just stands in place. It's terrible. And then after a moment of standing in place, you start running forward. So first of all, there's a wind up to the attack, the dash attack. When normally when players want to start running, they don't stand still. They start already moving toward the target. Okay, so after dash attack begins, you're running in a straight line and you're going about the speed of a run. So you're just going about as fast as other weapons anyways. But the difference, other weapons can immediately move into an iframe with a roll, and they can turn 90-degree angles. A dash attack can't do that. And then finally, dash attack has to finish with either guarding or a finishing thrust. Neither of those are very good because they both have long recovery frames. So if you use a finishing thrust on a monster and that monster doesn't punish you for finishing thrust, congratulations, you've successfully used dash attack and you feel good. And that's how, you practice dash attack to try and get good enough to do that over and over again. But there's plenty of cases where you don't get an opening to finish your dash attack and you're forced to guard, where other weapons would have just kind of walked around the attack. Does that make sense? So the monster turns towards you, you're using your dash attack, and now you're forced to guard, and you lose all your momentum, you're knocked back, you take some chip damage, and there's all these recovery frames involved. Other weapons like the hammer, you just run around the attack, easy mode. You just run around the attack. Just a little 90-degree angle, nope, going around that. Totally different experience. I can show you that, and you see it in the gameplay against a really tough monster. You fight like Kulve Taroth in the last stage solo, and you will see it. You'll have like the hammer, and you will just weave in and out between Kulve Taroth's legs easily. You can't do that with dash attack. And dash attack, again, really is only going as fast as a run until after the first level of charge on the dash attack. Well, after the first level of charge, you start going a little bit faster than somebody who is running. Just a little bit. You don't even go that much faster. So the gain you get from it is not as impressive as you think it is. And after the second level of charge on the lances... Oh, hold on, let me take this. After the second level... What can I give up? Let's give up... I guess Nullberry. Wait. We didn't even get... Oh my god. Hold on, let me go get... We didn't even get the hot drink. We just got the hot pepper. This is so stupid. So anyways. The dash attack is not as good as you guys are being told it is. I would know this as somebody who's used the lance a lot. Move over here. People will say, Lance is so mobile. Lance is so mobile. It is not that mobile. It is one of the least mobile weapons in the game. And people like to say that is mobile because to them, that's their way of saying, I'm good at the lance. But the reality is the actual mechanics of the lance are designed to make it less mobile than the other weapons. Buff lance damage and dash attack and add some crusading music. Hell yeah. Whoa, Soldier Boy is still here. What? Hold on. How do I get out of here? I'm looking at this screen. Jacob, I feel like none of that threat is accurate. Just a bunch of people defending a bad weapon. Dash attack is affected by focus skill? Hold on, let's grab this. Oh, right. This is the only place where I do not have a Raider Rider. Wow, that's really bad. And he's dead. Whoops. I took so long talking and trying to get my hot drink going that they killed him first. Twitch says, well, here's a comparison. Our Bracky gun lance that swings does 500 damage, along with the Wyvern Stake at the end is around 700 damage on a decent his own value. Normal lance does around 300-400 per 3 pokes on a good his own value. Yeah, I ought to just take a screenshot of my previous video where we analyzed the speedrunner tier list and just talk about that. Lil Remix makes a point. He says, my friend enjoys using the dash attack to trip everyone when they're sharpening. So it's funny that you bring that up because I also love to do that. It's a very fun part of playing the lance. But let's be real for a minute. What's really going on is you're dropping the damage output of your teammates with that. So what we would call that is a negative side effect of the dash attack. So not only does dash attack basically go about as fast as a run, but it forces you to have an initial windup. It has slow recovery frames at the end of the dash attack. And because the dash attack, you have to keep moving forward until you end it. It also is not good for outspacing because of that. It's got all these negative parts to it, and people say it's good for mobility. It's not. It's not. It's just another one of those things that people drill into your heads because they want you to believe it. But when you actually break it down by its parts, you can see that it's much worse than if you were just playing sword and shield and just put your weapon away and ran. Hi, sorry for asking, where can I get the Fury Charm? You can get it at Walmart. Melanie says, what's funny is I was just reading a thread on Reddit full of frustrated lance mains complaining about the lance. Right? God Terror Boy says, I'm going to have flashbacks in 2 years about GC knocking me over with the lance. Kana was going to help this guy with our Bracky. Pepe hands. Yeah, I was always yell at my friends if he trips me with the dash attack. Exactly. Ia says, imagine if the guiding lance unlockable monsters had been more like Garuga's Nogur and less like Wrath recolors. Simon says, what's the best way to practice bow? I want to change from greatsword. That's a great question, Simon, and one of the reasons that I was studying defensive builds is because I think when you're getting ready to try a brand new weapon that you're absolutely terrible at, a great way to practice it is to go out into multiplayer fights or solo and to have a real defensive setup where the fight, yeah, it's going to take longer, but you're going to die less. And what that means is you're going to have more uptime to just keep making mistakes, but also see what works. So you need an initial idea of how the bow works. And then I would say you need a number of runs for practice. And then you'll be ready to start dropping off the defensive skills when you feel like you're playing very well. So right here is actually a defensive build. The one I'm using right now. You can see it here. Crit Eye Agitator, Divine Blessing, Secret. Wow. Health boost, crit boost, weakness exploit, spread, power shot, blast attack, normal shot, bow charge plus. And that Divine Blessing Secret is just so useful. It's really powerful. It keeps you alive a lot. So is the health boost. But this particular bow build will not do that well. It's the downside. Wait a second. We don't want to fight this guy. He's resistant to blast. Gold Raytheon. I think, is Gold Raytheon weak to blast? The name's Lavasiath. I don't know if any of these guys are weak to blast. Lance can do well. It's just versus certain monsters is absolute dog shit. The Lance has been the subject of our conversations quite a bit the last 2 days. Man, we probably will not get black belt from this, but let's try. Oh, we got Feline Sharpshooter. Cool. Omar says, I'm using Hammer in high rank. Do you have any sets other than Draken? I'm using Hammer in high rank. Not really. I would say Draken's kind of like the ultimate armor setup over there. Draken's really powerful because of Master's Touch and all of the other useful skills like Crit Boost, Weakness Exploit, Crit Eye. However, there is probably a way to set up for the most defense possible over in the base game. And it would probably include... Well, it's been a long time. I remember the Cove legs. No, the Lunastra legs. The Lunastra legs I remember being real good for defense. Lunastra legs and Lunastra arms, I think. Wellick says, I got my 4th Mighty Bow decoration from Tempered Ruiner. Saying that you're Trask and don't know how to use lance is a terrible way to win a debate. I know, man. They just come after me. You know, and the funny thing is, if they're going to say, okay, you die too much, that I'm a perfect candidate to be using a defensive weapon. I'm a perfect candidate. Remember the other day, I was putting together as much defense as I could on a greatsword. And then I called my wife over, who has never fought Tempered Rajang, and she was just waking up, and she hadn't played Monster Hunter in like a month, and she still beat him. Do you remember that? That's an actual really good survivable setup. And that's one of those things that helps me understand this is what defense is. But maybe that's a difference in the understanding of the word defense. You see what I'm saying? HP Blast says, if you could add a new weapon in Monster Hunter World 2, what would it be? The mace. Doom says, I never knew Lance players were this loud. All bark, no bite. I use the Luna legs for health. Diamond Dog says, Lance is never going to win, sadly. Anyone else think that Insect Glaive should get some new moves? I think Insect Glaive is actually in a really good position. You know what Insect Glaive could really use is a slight buff to the aerial damage that it deals. And the reason I think this would be a good idea is because when you just play Lance from the ground to optimize for damage, it ends up feeling like pretty much like a worse longsword. It's really when you play the Insect Glaive from the air that it feels more like a distinct weapon and it feels exciting and fun. But because the aerial attacks don't do as much damage, you end up never wanting to do that. So if they were just to bring up the damage of the aerial attacks by a little bit, I think players would really be into using the Insect Glaive a lot more. You'll find more people want to do it. Who got it? Oh, Twitch got it? Nice. Ouch. Arson says women play Monster Hunter. No. Actually, to tell you the truth, almost my entire audience, nice job, almost my entire audience is male, which is not true for my card channel. My card channel is almost like 20-30% female, but Monster Hunter, apparently guys like this game. Alright, let's put on our... You know, I'm going to put on the power coatings. Do you remember Elemental Airborne from the Draken set? That should come back for the Aerial Insect Glaive. Exactly. I was trying to put together one of those builds. Remember that? With the QR weapons? It didn't feel that powerful, but that's what we used to solo Kulf Taroth. Do you remember? I did a solo on Kulf Taroth with nothing but Aerial Insect Glaive, and at the time that's what I was using. Of course, back then we also didn't know that she was weak to... At the time we didn't know she was weak to raw damage, so I shouldn't have been using that setup anyways. Is that a good tip for playing bow? Dash sliding to reposition your shots. I mean, you're going to use the dash all the time. What's it called? The, smacking the head. I'm not really aiming too well. Guys like doing the same things over and over again. Hunting monsters is the ideal sexual male fantasy. That's actually a good point to make. I didn't think about that. Yeah. Hunting is definitely a guy thing, isn't it? I don't think girls are as much into hunting. I didn't even think of it that way. Our grandfather, not our grandfathers, our ancient ancestors would have been throwing spears at a mammoth all day. Don't do it. Raging, swinging, flying wyverns around is the best thing. That's pretty funny. Oh my god, I didn't even see it coming. TG, yeah, I remember in one of your live streams months back that you were talking about how you encounter a lot of toxic people online. Well, I mean, and that's just part of being more of a public figure, you know what I mean? So, if your channel's doing well, people recognize you sooner on the internet, and then people don't treat you the same. They don't treat you like a person, basically. I think you get treated more like an object when you're a YouTuber. They don't think of you as an individual, which is understandable. I think that's just how it goes. All part of the game. Hey, mister, any tips for light bowgun? Any tips for light bowgun? Light bowgun. Use the elemental builds. Aqua shot is terrific for sticky ammo. You guys see the PS5 tech demo? There was a tech demo for PlayStation 5? I'll mistake you for a blind man. You are kind of blind if you play while reading comments, to be honest. I do look over, but I'm constantly looking over at the comment section, too. Kitty, what are you doing? Have you ever had issues with weight gain and negative thoughts about body image? Well, yeah, I've gained weight. I've definitely been gaining weight over the last 3 years. So it's like almost 10 years, not 10 years, it's almost 10 pounds a year. But I have a plan to change it all. I'm going to turn my life around. The reason I've been gaining weight, of course, is because I used to work lots and lots of labor jobs. And when you work lots of labor jobs, you eat big meals, lots of energy, right? And I still love big meals, but I don't do any labor. My labor today is sitting at a computer playing video games, and I've been doing this for 2 years. And before this, I went to school for 4 years. So I have been sitting around a lot. I have a sedentary lifestyle. And what I've been doing recently is we've been going on daily walks. And what I plan on doing, see, I was going to do this earlier, but I gave up on it because it's so expensive. What I plan on doing is buying an elliptical, and then I'm going to definitely get like a daily run right inside of my air-conditioned home. We're going to get a daily run every day. So I need exercise equipment. You know, it's not even so much a money thing. Well, it is a little bit of a money thing, but the bigger problem is that I have no room in my home. I've got this tiny condo that my wife and I live in, and we have been trying to figure out how the heck we would fit in a piece of exercise equipment. And we've finally kind of figured it out. We're going to put it into the bedroom, and we're getting rid of a desk in the bedroom. That's where we're going to fit it. So the next step is we actually have to pay for it. But there's still, in terms of financially, what's going on in our lives is, I'm going to die. Financially, what's going on in our lives is is he still after me? No, he's not. In our lives, her parents, her mother, last year was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And it was I can't remember the type of cancer it was, but apparently it's one of the stage 4 cancers you have a better chance of surviving. It wasn't skin cancer. It was a different one. I can't remember what it was. But her mother spent a full year having cancer treatments, and her parents went bankrupt. And so what we ended up doing is we bought their home from them. So we pulled out a mortgage to buy their home, and they used the sale of their home to afford the cancer treatment. And then we're stuck, me and my wife are stuck with 2 homes, okay? So we've got their old home and our small condo, and we're paying mortgages on both. And then what we ended up doing was we bought them another house. This one's a much smaller house because our plan for them in the long run is to sort of use that as a retirement home where they don't have to pay as much money, as much rent, because the house is a much smaller house than their original home. They couldn't afford the rent on their regular home, the mortgage. So we bought them a much smaller home, and now they're kind of like retired in a way, and you know, they're trying to make ends meet. They got no money. That's the problem. They don't have any money, and we're helping them out with that, and we help them out with payments on the medicine. And so now we're stuck with 3 mortgages. That's where my wife and I are at. We've got 3 mortgages and 2 student loan debts. 3 mortgages and 2 student loan debts. So we're desperately trying to sell her parents' old home, but an unforeseen thing happened. The coronavirus hits. And what happens is, with the coronavirus having come in, everything's disrupted. The economy is not the same. People aren't earning as much money. The housing market is dropping. So we bought them a house at the worst possible time. Nobody expected this to happen. We bought it at the worst possible time. Just as the coronavirus struck, we bought them the new house, which we might have gotten at a better price if we hadn't had. and now we can't sell the old house. So we have 3 mortgages and 2 student loan debts. It's horrifying. Like, we spend every day just, carefully looking at the debts and going, all right, how much are we going to need to allocate for this? How much are we going to need to allocate for that? So I work overtime and she works overtime and we just work. No way do we have time for we don't have time to save up money and get our own nice house. We don't have time for kids. It's really sad. I feel like it's kind of representative of what in general is happening in the country. You got all these people who spent their lives not saving up for their retirement years. That would be like her parents, and now they need medical bills paid, and they can't pay the bills, and so the children pay the bills instead of having children. It's really sad and it's really bad. And we're doing our best to make really smart decisions. That's why we moved them into the smaller home. We moved them into the smaller home because we figure, hey, we can get them into a tiny house. They pay low rent, and then they start saving up money for their own retirement. Because we can't be there to just pay for their retirement. You know what I mean? So they're going to have to do it. They're going to have to start saving money for once, and that's just really difficult because you can't force people to be good with their money. You can't force people to do that. So it's just really tough. It's really sad, all of it too. Like the fact that she had cancer in the first place. But it's bound to happen. If you live long enough, you get cancer. That's how it works. So, and they weren't prepared for it, and we can't do anything about that other than use all of our money to pay for their stuff. Or we could have the government tax everyone, and you guys can pay for her stuff. TGC is greater than TGE. Luke Kretis says bankrupt from cancer treatment. Pretty sad that something like that are a thing in a first world country like America. Yeah, but the alternative is you all pay for it. So you can all pay for her treatment, or my wife and I can pay for her treatment. And you prefer that? Oh my God. You prefer to live in a system where everyone pays for her treatment, and I prefer. See, we've finished paying for it all, and I still wouldn't agree to live in a country with socialized healthcare. I prefer to pay for it myself, and I prefer to be able to shop for it, which I think is the bigger problem. The bigger problem in medicine is that you're not allowed to shop for medicine. Did you know that? The doctors don't tell you how much it costs. They keep it all secret, and if you ask them that if you tell them I won't accept treatment until you tell me the cost, they just won't give you the treatment. So that has to be made illegal so that you can actually shop for your medicine. Oh man, am I gonna die here? Oh, I just realized you can't broadcast out. Got it. We pay lower taxes in America. You're supposed to be able to save up for your retirement. You're supposed to save up for your retirement, and we have parents that didn't do that, and that's not our fault. So we have to decide, how much are we going to help them? But it was up to them to decide to save up, and they just didn't make that decision. And before you start feeling all super bad, her parents were, the beneficiaries, if that's the right word, of a lot of, they received a pretty good inheritance. Her parents did. Her parents received inheritances from both sides of the family. And so there was a point in their life where they had plenty of money. All they had to do was put that money into a investment account, and they would have today been wealthy. What they did instead was they spent it all. So they had a case where they had extremely poor money management, and now in the future their children are going through extreme lengths to pay for all of their issues. And it's so unfair for me and my wife to be in that situation, just to not see her mother die of cancer. When her mother and her father were in a perfectly okay position to take care of themselves, they chose to spend the money and then have their children pay for it. And that's a perfect example of why socialist systems will fall apart, because what you're doing is you're telling people, hey, I'll pay for your stuff, and then what they're going to do is they're going to use you. So a very careful mix of socialism and capitalism is the best system, and we can have a conversation about how much is the right amount of socialism, how much is the right amount of capitalism. But the problem is, if you have money today, and if you guys are not saving up money right now for your cancer treatment in the future, really what you're saying is the government's going to pay for it, or my children are. Who's going to pay for it? It's obviously not free. Doctors are expensive. They have to go to school for a really expensive medical degree. They have to work for a for-profit company. You could say the company should be non-profit, But then what incentive do geniuses have to go into that industry and make changes in the world? They don't have as big of an incentive, and they go into other industries to do changes over there instead. Right? Like Elon Musk, he could have been a doctor and researcher, but he chose to open up a car plant. Okay. So, anyways, you have a chance right now in your life to start saving up for your cancer treatment. And most people just choose not to do this. And the question is, well, should the government cover it all? Or should people be responsible for their own treatment? And I feel that the world runs better when you govern yourself. When you wake up in the morning and say, I have to work, I have to put money away for the cold winter, and I'm mostly responsible for myself. If society decides to help me, that's great, and I will help them as well. But there's a limit where you start to ask people too much. You start to say, hey, give me 50% taxes. And the people no longer want to participate in that kind of society. So what do? They leave to America. They go over to America because they don't want to pay 50% taxes. That's too high. So most people are okay paying taxes. But there's a limit to how much taxes you pay. There's a limit where you say, that's my money. I worked for that. I get up in the morning and I go to work and I have a job and I suffer through the job, and that's my money. And you want 40% of it. You want 50% of it. You want 60%. When you do the tax brackets, it's not as good as you think it is. So the tax brackets may look low, like, okay, 23% or whatever. But when you count sales tax, your employer's side of the income tax, when you count sin tax on something you might enjoy, like sodas, when you count gas tax, when you drive your car, there's a gas tax. When you count property tax, you own a car, we're going to tax you on your car. When you start accounting for all these things, when you apply for a marriage license, you got to pay for a marriage license. When you start applying all those things, you start to realize the government takes much more than what you think the government takes. And that's true in Europe as well. And if you work hard, you should enjoy the things you worked on. And that's not a crazy idea. That's a normal idea. If you worked really hard, you should be allowed to have nice toys. And most people then kind of, when they're pro increasing socialism, they say, well, we're just going to take from billionaires. We can have that discussion. I think there's a certain amount you can take from billionaires. Usually what people get mad about are percentage rates. They say, yeah, well, billionaires only pay X percentage rate and I pay this percentage rate. That's not good enough. What you have to realize is they actually pay millions of dollars in taxes, and you pay like $2,000. Do you see? So you get upset about their tax rate, but you miss the part where they give millions and millions and millions of dollars more than you, sometimes like $300 million of taxes, and you give like, I don't know, whatever it is you gave over the course of a year. It could be like 5, 6, 10,000. It depends on what your job is. But so the rates are one way of looking at, but actually looking at how much they gave up is another way of looking at it. So there is a disparity when you talk about just the percentage rates, but the disparity is actually the other way around when you look at what was actually paid. Anyways, thank you so much. Dax, he says, I'm sorry to hear about that. Enjoy some economic funds. Thanks, man. Rayner says, Americans and Westerners in general need to learn from Asian parents that a rainy day is always in the foreseeable future. Also, socialized medicine inevitably leads to the government gating your treatment. Yeah, I mean, that's another interesting thing. So, and we've talked about it on this subject before. First of all, thanks for the donation, man. We've talked about how you can have the government take over your health care, and then it's the government's bill. So they're the ones who pay for it. But the problem with having the government decide your health care is then the government starts to decide, how do I save money on this? And then they start doing things where they start adding rules for you, like, okay, well, you can have this much treatment at this period of time, but they have other problems, like maybe they don't have enough money for the same level of innovation that a for-profit corporation would have. And then they maybe have other problems where they start deciding what's healthy for you, where they say, you know what, maybe you shouldn't eat this. So I get all of that. I'm not opposed to a government system that operates your healthcare. The problem I have is maybe I don't trust my government that much. I don't know how much you guys trust the government. The government, frankly, really annoys me when I go to like the DMV and they've got wait lines that are horrendous. It's so shocking how bad the DMV is when you compare it to any privatized business like Amazon. Amazon is instant. It's like bam, bam, bam. You're doing paperwork. DMV is paperwork. Mostly it's just paperwork. It could all be online. but they don't have any incentive to do any of the innovation for the DMV because they're government bureaucracy. They don't have any incentive other than whether or not you vote out the people who run the DMV, which you never do. Nobody ever does. So, and then you have the USPS is another company that's run by the government. USPS really struggles. They struggle to compete with UPS and FedEx and DHL. I'm not saying I dislike UPS. I kind of like UPS actually, but I've heard that they really, really struggle as a business, and it just makes you feel like, who do you want operating this industry that requires a lot of skill? Do you want a bunch of elected leaders who are bureaucrats who went to school for law to operate it and make major decisions for it? Or do you want a businessman he's got his money in it, and his success is all dependent on that company succeeding? With the politician, their success is based on whether you voted for them. And sometimes they know they're going to win. Sometimes they know there's no other person to vote for. With the businessman, is all measured by dollar bills. So he either did a good job or a bad job serving your needs. And if he did a bad job, you find out real fast because money follows. So I feel like when it comes to a skilled industry, privatizing it tends to do a better job, not government. But maybe that's not true in Germany. I don't know. Maybe the German politicians are way more competent. Some people might disagree with that too. I don't know how popular Angela Merkel is at this point in Germany. Maybe she's very popular. I have respect for all political leaders, including ones that are so controversial. Maybe not AOC. Let's jump over to the Switch Axe. There was a weapon request for the Switch Axe. Let's see. AOC. Here we go. We're going to grab this one right here. And we're going to choose manage items. Sorry about that. I should have been playing the whole time, but I was like talking. I was getting into the subject. But yeah, that's where we've been financially, my wife and I. The whole subject started with like, oh man, how do you feel about weight gain? And if you were a Chad and all buff and in shape like Brad Pitt or whatever, you're gonna feel better about yourself. Obviously, on issues of insecurity, is a very interesting subject because people like, not only are they afraid of having something that's wrong about them, they're afraid of being insecure about the thing that's wrong about them. It's kind of like the whole body shaming thing when it comes to fat people. How do I feel about body shaming? And it's a real thing because your brain has automatic genetic sensors and health sensors that tell you when a person is attractive versus non-attractive. When you get fat, you're unattractive. That's all. Anyone who doesn't believe that is lying. When you get fat, you're kind of unattractive. When you're in shape, when you're healthy, you're more attractive. You want to feel good about yourself? Go work out. Usually it's very easy to work out. Usually you have some excuse like I do. I'm working real hard. I want to eat some Pizza Hut instead. But if you're going to enjoy Pizza Hut, you're also going to enjoy diabetes later or whatever it is, right? So, but that's why I'm trying to be healthier. That's why I'm trying to get more walks in and stuff like that. That's why I'm trying to buy an elliptical so that I have a piece of workout equipment in my home. It's just something you have to work on. It gets harder. That's a funny thing. I'm older now. I used to be 18 years old. And when you turn 18, you just get thin. That's it. You just get thin. You don't even have to do anything. Your body just makes you thin. And then it feels like every year that goes by, my diet gets stricter and I work harder to try and work out. And yet I still gain weight. It's like, can I just go back to being young? That's what it feels like. Can I go back to being 18, please? So, and that's maybe a warning to you guys as well. The further away you get from 18, the stricter your diet will be, the more you'll work out, and the fatter you'll get anyways. So that's a warning to all of you guys. It also means act now when it comes to getting a girlfriend, because as time goes by, you will not look as attractive anymore. You look very attractive between the ages of 18 and 25, and your body starts to look different after 25, so you better get moving. Get moving. Somebody actually contacted me the other day and told me he went out on a date after a conversation we had in our chat time on one of the live streams. That's pretty crazy. But yeah, the whole body image thing, I feel like it's a question of how do we have self-esteem. So you got like a self-esteem movement where people are like, yeah, self-love and self-acceptance and all this other stuff. Used to be religion did that for you, by the way. It used to be that God loved you no matter what, And so you would believe that, and that would kind of give you the confidence you needed to not really worry so much about other people. Most people today are not religious. Most people, I would say. And so what happens is you kind of get your approval from everyone else. And so it's very easy to let people on the internet beat you up. Actually, is a great example. The last video, everyone's trying to crap on me, but I've got very thick skin because I had a big family of 11 kids, total of 13 people. We were doing that stuff to each other all the time. But you try to get your approval from outside sources in the world, and then you get this messaging from the internet. Oh, don't do that. Oh, you're so strong, and oh, just ignore them. But it's like you can't ignore them. You can't ignore them, and you can't ignore yourself. The truth is, we do constantly evaluate ourselves. That's the reality. We do evaluate ourselves, and we hope to evaluate ourselves well. That's how we hope to do it. But my opinion when it comes to having high esteem is not to listen to words, is to listen to results. Listen to results and listen to your accomplishments. Accomplishments will give you more self-esteem and confidence than anything else ever. So if you're like young and you're like, oh, I don't know if I could date a girl, go get a good job. If you get a good job and you start getting a good paycheck, your self-esteem will move up real fast. If you're worried about being out of shape, the fastest way to actually feel self-confident again is to go work out. It's actually not complicated. Usually a lot of problems in life like this are very uncomplicated. The biggest problem is that people just don't do what they know they need to do, right? So maybe you need to be asking yourself, why don't I have the motivation to work out? Or why am I addicted to this garbage food that I keep eating? How do I change that? How do I get more motivated? How do I eat better? So that's usually the problem is really simple and obvious. Yeah, people don't think you're as attractive when you're fat, by the way. And you're going to gain weight if you're like me and you play video games every day and mostly just play video games every day. But that means you need to be out there, you need to be working out, and don't wait to get a girlfriend. Get a girlfriend when you're still young, get a job when you're still young, be productive every day, You better be working on these things, you better have a plan. You a thick boy? I used to be real thin. I'm not like super thick, but I'm definitely not as thin as I used to be. I used to be super thin. I used to be like stick thin. Like nerdy stick thin. When is TGC self-help book coming out? Limit to intake of immigrants prevents unnecessary spending. China has been getting too good a trade, but Democrats put the ye old lance main and whine like babies, even though Trump is right. Well, and we were talking about this in a chat on the Discord. Every now and then, I'll pop onto the Discord and have a live chat with you guys in the chat rooms in Discord, where we actually talk to each other. And I was asking people how they felt about immigration, more or less. And one of the guys said, "Well, it's not really about more or less, is it? It's more about what kind of immigrants are you taking in? Are you taking in a bunch of immigrants who are just going to immediately go into welfare? Or are you taking immigrants that are going to have skilled trades, And I think that that's probably one of the really defining factors of how your country does well with immigration. And your country can do a certain amount of helping people in the world who are poor by importing them into your country. There's a lot of land out there in the world. You ever notice, Africa's huge. Africa is enormous. And Germany is not that large. The UK is not that large. These are small places. You can't just import all the sad poor people in the world can't just be imported into your country. There's not enough room, literally. And by the way, there's not enough houses. There's not enough houses, and you pay an awful lot of taxes just to stay poor and not be able to afford a home where you can have children, just so that your government can import a bunch of poor people for the corporations to put to work and undercut your pay wage, right? So you get a bunch of poor people from another country come in, they're happy to work for much less than you, and then all of a sudden you're paid less than you would have been paid if those people had not joined your country. So people should be picky about immigration the way you should be picky about dating. Who do you want to be married to? Well, when you invite people into your country, you're marrying them in a way. You're marrying them into your country. And really, you should be picky about that. There's nothing to be shameful about being picky about that. It's nothing to be shameful when you pick your wife and your girlfriend. You don't just pick anyone. You pick the person you like. You find them particular. This was a funny subject, too. We were talking about how, were we talking about this in a different live stream? I was like, what kind of girl do you like? Do you like Russians? Do you like Latinas? And then I pointed out, you're racist. People were like, oh, I like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Just pick a race of particular girl that you like. Oh, blondes, redheads. You're racist. That's a racist thing to do, to say that you prefer one particular girl over another particular girl, right? Like, maybe you're really into black girls, right? Well, that's racist of you to say that you prefer one type of girl over another type of girl based nothing except on her looks. And yet we do this all the time, don't we? We do this and it's okay. Nobody really cares if you say that. Nobody really cares. But if you were to say something like, well, I'm pro-immigration, but probably the immigrants shouldn't go straight onto welfare, you're a racist. They call you a racist if you say that. They call you a racist if you say that. It's perfectly rational and reasonable to say that. Here's another one. You probably should not be importing anyone into your country who hates your country. Have you ever considered there's people who immigrate to your country and hate you at the same time? That's a real thing that happens. People will immigrate to your country despite hating it because it offers them welfare and a better opportunity at life. You should never be doing that. It doesn't make any sense. It's like dating somebody who hates you. It makes about as much sense as dating somebody who openly hates you. So the issue of immigration is a really big one for 2020 because people are so educated today. You've got more people than ever who want to immigrate around the world. I'm open-minded to immigrating to Europe. I like that Europe has a rich, ancient culture, and I have heritage in Europe, obviously. So, it's something that I'm open-minded to, but it's weird, I wouldn't want to move to anywhere in Europe that's too open to immigration. Isn't that funny? I'd actually want to move somewhere that's a little more, what would be the word? Again, sort of picky, being able to decide who comes in. I want to move to a place in Europe if I ever moved. I'm not saying I would. I like America's low taxes quite a lot. And America's sense of freedom and entrepreneurship and what would be the word? It's sort of like a Wild West feeling that you only seem to get in America. But if I were to ever move to a place in Europe, I'd want to move to maybe like an area that really does like itself, and says, yeah, we like ourselves, and if you don't like us, you shouldn't be here. You know what I mean? You shouldn't be here. We're happy the way we are. We're not here to change. We're not here to change. We're here to stay the same. We're not here to turn into you. We're here to stay us. You know what I mean? And that's a big deal. To me, it's a clear indicator of like who's winning right now, like who's doing well versus who is not doing well. But you get a lot of, I don't know, sort of like self-haters who are like, we hate ourselves. Can we be you? And then they say, how many people can we import and how quickly can we change? I don't understand that sort of personality. I feel like it's like a low self-esteem. I hate to use the term in a realistic sense rather than just an ironic sense, but almost like this sort of beta male thing. Kind of like, I don't want to be me. You know what I mean? I want to be you. And it's like, where do you get that from? I don't understand that. That's a terrible way to be. All the animals in nature with that attitude, they disappear over time. They get replaced by the animals that like themselves. You know what I mean? If you argue that there are more empty houses than immigrants, that is what it sounded like to me. Maybe I'm wrong, but that is really not relevant. Scotland, neoliberalism. Scotland. Why do you mention Scotland? I'm curious. I've actually taken an interest in Scotland. Godtris and Shrimp says, an arm, a leg, and you're firstborn. Jesus says, you want to live in Mexico then? I mean, I'd be open to living anywhere, but I'd probably end up moving to Europe. Oh, God. Hey, what's your favorite monster to hunt? Regardless of your answer, you're racist. You're a racist. He's a racist man. One thing is self-hatred, another is wanting to improve. A lot of people choose the former. Literally a Breitbart regurgitation stream right now. I don't even know what you're talking about. Is this a Krusty Krab? Be yourself and open-minded. Yeah, sometimes when people tell you to be... I won't comment on that more. Be yourself and be open-minded. If you hate it, why not leave? Here, let me get this blast off me. This is the Krusty Krab. You want mayonnaise or ketchup? Scotland sold their country out to the refugees. Are you talking about recently? Well, this is Patrick. I'm not here to have racism thrown at me. Oh, Jesus. Well, that's exactly what happens, guys. If you try to have a adult conversation about real issues that involve an awful lot of money, people will call you racist. That's what happens. If you have a real conversation about this. This isn't about race. I didn't mention any particular race. I said two things, didn't I? I said you should be importing people who love your country, because just like in a relationship, if they don't love you, it's a shit relationship. And the other thing is, I said you should probably be bringing in people who have good job skills and don't immediately go onto welfare. None of that has anything to do with race. It has everything to do with money. But Mike moves immediately to calling me a racist. And that's part of the problem. In my view, that is part of the problem. It's a significant part of the problem. You're not even allowed to talk about it because they accuse you of racism. And I don't know what to say. I would hope not to move to a country full of Mikes. That's probably what I refer to when I say I don't want to move to a country that isn't able to make that sort of decision for themselves. My mind is so open that it's closed. Three Dogs says, I hate gamers. Get the gamers out of here. You're a racist. You're a racist man. Saying you need immigrants to be worth it is racist. Well, right. That is, a lot of people misunderstand that point. When they say, we need more diversity, yeah, you can interpret that as, another way to think of that is, there's too many white people or something like that, right? So let's just say you're German, and somebody in Germany says, we need more diversity. What you mean is, we need less Germans. That's what you mean. There's another way of looking at the way of saying that. Like, what is the problem with the number of Germans in Germany? It's Germany! You can't have an ancestral country. What if we were to say Mexico needs more diversity? People would call you a racist, or no, what they would call you is like a colonist. They would call you an imperialist or something like that. If you said, hey, let's send a bunch of white people down to Mexico, they would call you like a evil colonist and an imperialist and Christopher Columbus or something like that. But if you say it the other way around, then that's progress. That's good. That's awesome. Let's get rid. We need to diversify more. It's very frustrating, and people are not open about it at all because they're afraid of being called racist. But nobody likes to talk the truth. Nobody likes to tell the truth because it's too dangerous to say things that are true. When you get a big mob of people who will get angry at you and call you every bad word in the book, that's what'll happen. They'll call you every bad word in the book, and they'll try to take your job away or whatever because you don't agree with their point of view on something that is something worth talking about. I'm trying Safi Sword and Shield with Teostra Technique and the Safi 3-piece set, but I don't feel I do that much damage. I'm trying Safi Sword and Shield with Teostra Technique. Hold on. Let me heal because I'm about to die. Oh my god. I'm barely looking at my screen, and I probably should be looking at my screen. I don't feel I do. Okay, so you feel like you're not doing much damage with the Sword and Shield. Personally, I find with the Sword and Shield in multiplayer that, yeah, I kind of struggle too, and that's because the monster kind of chases your teammates. And this becomes a problem because when the monster chases your teammates, you end up having to chase too, and the Sword and Shield is not the best weapon for chasing. I'm black and I have the power to call someone racist. They took your jabs! This is why I don't mix with politics. You're never right or wrong. Bruh, Sword and Shield with Teo is bow levels of damage if you're actually building correctly. At one point, when neolibs or tankies call you racist or bigoted, just answer with yes, you're absolutely right. You got me. You exposed me. Right. It's definitely a point in time where you're not allowed to have an opinion on these things because people will attack you rather than the argument. They will attack you as a racist rather than saying, oh, I can see how you, who already live in your country and already pay taxes, and you could have a social net that could help your mother. I could see how you might not be super interested in absorbing all the homeless people from another country, particularly maybe homeless people that don't even like you. They're just there for the money. You see what I'm saying? People will attack you for that, and it's, I feel like the problem for them attacking you is they don't realize they're almost self-defeating by not actually being open-minded and listening. You know what I mean? People were surprised when Donald Trump won the election in America. And it's like, but you don't understand. Did you consider there's a reason why he won? You're not listening. You're not listening to both sides. People just dismiss you and say, yeah, you're evil. We have to get rid of you. I'm allowed to have an opinion. It's not about white. The world is just a big experiment. Right and wrong is determined by the majority. Yeah, right and wrong's more like determined by, I wouldn't say the majority. I would say that right and wrong is determined by power. Power determines right and wrong. China's actually right about that, in my opinion. So the Chinese Communist government, a lot of their political philosophy just comes from who has power. And a lot of our political philosophy is like, what is morally good? What's free? What's freedom and democracy? But the Chinese just say, no, forget about freedom and democracy. Who has power? And I think that the reason freedom and democracy has worked for so long is because it leads to power. But if there was ever a case where it didn't, then yeah, it would turn out that freedom and democracy would take second fiddle to whatever system was creating the most power, it turns out. Which is why it's such an interesting situation that all of Europe has lost in terms of economic, oh my gosh, hold on, economic power compared to China. Nobody really talks about that or cares about that. And China's doing quite well right now. Oh no. Just come to Australia. We have super low numbers of COVID-19 cases. You'll be safe here. In Mexico, though, that means I'm immune to be called racist, says Arson. Right and wrong is largely determined by power. Yeah, this is precisely what I was just saying. You are such a beta. Mike says, white people voted for Trump almost exclusively. Black women voted against Trump to about 97%. That's actually not true, Mike. So when you take a look, you can go to Pew Research for this. When you look at Pew Research, the actual breakdown of voting came down to this. It's about 60% white men voted for Trump and 60% white women voted for Hillary. So Donald Trump won on actually pretty small margins. He didn't win on they make it seem like a huge margin because of the Electoral College. But remember, Hillary actually won the popular vote. Right? So Donald Trump won thanks to the Electoral College, the way that was designed. And when you do a breakdown of how they voted, it was just a small majority of white men voting for Donald Trump. It was not some huge majority. And you're right, it was about 97% black women voted against him. And that's same every election, actually. That's pretty consistently how blacks vote. They vote to the left in really overwhelming numbers. And I believe Latinos vote about 70%. I could be wrong on that. I'm trying to remember, actually. I read the article a while ago. But I believe that Latinos were voting roughly 70% toward the left. It's interesting because I was reading, I think I read a different article that it said it depended on where they came from. Like if they came from Cuba, this is funny. Immigrants from Cuba are Latino and they tend to vote conservative, of all things, because they're familiar with a communist sort of system where the government has too much power and takes all your money and they don't like it anymore. So they left Cuba to come to America and they vote conservative. And then, so yeah, that is really interesting to have learned that. But yeah, the idea that white people are just majority voting for Trump, that's true only for men. The women aren't even voting for him. For women, it's still a minority voting for Trump. These numbers are public. Trump got the most percent of black votes for Republican in 50 years, including men, if that's okay with you. Are we having a political war with Mike? Love how none do you can stay on point. I'm sorry, I had trouble reading that. What are you talking about? Why is it such a big deal of what race voted for who? I consider that racism. No, actually, it is actually a very important thing, Big Boss. It plays a very large role in being able to determine who you should advertise to and what the interests of individual politicians are. It's a very big issue. It allows politicians basically to make predictions on how the vote's going to go and who they need to appeal to. Do you see what I'm saying? It also, it makes a big deal because of demographics as well. So if your country, let's say your country consisted of even more white males, you would expect Donald Trump to win more consistently. Whereas if your country had fewer of them, you would expect him to eventually lose, just because of demographic change. Mary says, I'll make the country great again. Same reason with Chinese first-gen immigrants vote mostly fiscally conservative. Use blast is the best raw. I addressed the misinformation first, and then the racist bullshit kept pouring. Wait, are you talking about the Lance? I'm probably I missed that message. I'd love to hear about the misinformation, Mike, because I did not see a comment that addressed misinformation in the Lance video. I actually would like to see that. Game theory, baby. I'll stop now. Politics get heated, especially when you have an SHW in the room. Raging Bat says, if you're going to get triggered by someone saying something to you, you deserve to be bonked on the head. I wouldn't care if Donald Trump killed a dog on live TV. Just keep sending me Trump bucks. Nancy Pelosi was really mad about that. So what Proshogun's referring to is after the stimulus package was arrived at, Donald Trump apparently had he asked that his name be written on the stimulus checks that would go to everyone. Isn't that funny? Oh my God. It wasn't supposed to have his name on it, but he's like, yeah, we're putting my name on it. Send me them Trump bucks. Too funny. All right. I haven't watched Lance's video because I know how dog shit it is. Is it possible to dodge the attack from raging brachydios when he runs toward me to punch me by rolling into him? Yeah, it is possible. I've done it. It's just it's weird because it's like the hitbox lags for a while. It exists for a while. Here we are. Trump bucks bad, forceful shutdown bad, SJW's worse. Where can I find Trump hat so I can smack someone who thinks is racist? What? You can be as complicit as you want. Power in a country that makes everything inflated. Trump is the most entertaining president in history. Give me more of daddy's money. Give me some more of them Trump bucks. Release says, I don't even consider myself a Trump guy, but he's absolutely hilarious. Mary says, is Trump bucks better than V-bucks? Trump bucks. Yeah, not Hillary. Nancy Pelosi was furious that Trump had his name written on all the stimulus checks. How's it going, Trayson? Investigations. But yeah, I would say out of the conversation we had with Mike in the brief amount of time here, the main thing I would take away is that I was talking to you guys about the idea that the people in a country should be able to decide who comes into their country. You should be able to make financial decisions about immigration, like should the immigrants go straight onto welfare. You should be able to ask, do you guys love my country? It's a simple question, but there's going to be people who say, you know what, honestly, I don't. There's going to be people like that. And you should be able to say, well, why are you coming into the country then? It doesn't make any. Why would I want you here if you don't even like us? Those are basic questions. They have nothing to do with race. They have everything to do more with shared values, I'd say. Shared values in finance. And those are fair questions for immigration. And the moment you start to ask them, you're called a racist or a xenophobe or whatever you're going to be called. And it's sad. I think it's sad that you're not allowed to ask those questions. I think that it's actually extremely damaging. There's people who talk about like civil war ever happening again in the United States, and I think that's the kind of attitude that would end up leading to a sort of real conflict like that, because it's one side saying, nah, I won't even hear your argument, I'm going to attack you. Because what you might do is you might say, you know what, you could make a counter argument along the lines of, hey, they're on welfare today, but tomorrow they will be a productive citizen after we help them. Now, that's the counter argument. And we can have a discussion about it, and there's data about it. You can have an actual discussion about that. Or you could say something like, we're going to help them for a while because their country's in shambles at the moment, and then they can return home when their country is doing better, and we'll keep certain ones. But many will probably have to go home. So that would be relevant to maybe like Germany, who helps Syria, right? So you can have a conversation like that. That would be a calm adult conversation. When the conversation immediately moves to, you're a racist because you're not accepting everyone into your country, you're not importing the world's homeless people, that's a very bad there's a very unproductive conversation that it leads to real conflict. You know what I mean? It's no longer a discussion of how should we run things in the best possible way. It's now a conversation of, all right, well, let's get our guns ready and have our fight, because obviously we're never going to see eye to eye and we're having a real conflict. It's a pity that that's what it turns into today, because that's all you hear now. That's all politics. That's all any conversation you have is that's all it is. It's just violence almost. It's like they want to move to violence, is what I'm saying. The conversation itself is not violence, but they're ready for it. It's like, yeah, let's just get to it. Let's just get to it. It's like, you ever wonder why humans have been at war pretty much for all existence? Humans have always been at war. This is it right here. Because you're not diplomatic, are you? You're not interested in diplomacy. You're interested in having things be your way. And if you try to have a real conversation, it just moves straight over to, yeah, let's kill each other. Nope, my point of view is that you're wrong and you're a racist man. You're a racist man. Let me refresh this and grab some anti-poison. All right, we're going to grab this. Herbal medicine. You forget, loyalty is very lacking nowadays, even more towards our own country. I saw a lot of people saying during World War III memes that they would switch sides if allowed to. That's a very relevant thing to talk about. You know, I think that the problem with the loyalty is blind loyalty. You reach a point where you say, I'm just loyal to the country and I will do anything I'm told. That's blind loyalty. It's not good for anyone. But that's different from having a kind of like a commitment toward shared values. Okay, so there really are differences in values in different countries. China versus America is a perfectly good concept of this. One believes in a communist regime that manipulates its currency and keeps its people poor so that it can continue to manufacture the goods for the world and become the world's most powerful economic country in the world, right? So that's China. And America believes in having elections, and the people get to vote you out if you printed too many Trump bucks. That's a very different system. And so deciding what you think is best for you is part of deciding what your values are. And once you know what your values are, you're meant to be loyal to those values. And then when you have people who oppose your values, right, you end up having a discussion about it and seeing if you can reach a conclusion where you're both happy, a compromise. And that's what democracy's mostly been all about. But it seems more and more in the future that people are not able to make that compromise, and they're not capable of having a good discussion, a productive discussion anymore. And if that can't occur, that's when you move to war. That's when you're ready for a civil war. When you can no longer have a productive conversation, but your values are too far apart, it's time for you to go at each other's throats and finish it. You know, like, all right, well, we can't both be wrong. One of us has to eventually take power in government, so let's find out who it's going to be. And when people reach a point where they will no longer be governed by the government that opposes their values, that's when you pick up a gun, you start killing. That's why we have the Second Amendment, by the way. The Democrats are often like, we're not going to take your hunting weapons away. That's what the Democrats say over and over again. We're going to let you keep your hunting rifle. The Second Amendment is not for hunting. The Second Amendment is for you to go to war. That's what the Second Amendment is for. That's why they want you to keep your guns. So the Founding Fathers are like, if you don't like the government that's ruling over you, you're meant to go kill them, right? That was the whole point of the Second Amendment. And it's something that Democrats hate tremendously. They don't like it, and for good reason, too. All the school shootings are horrifying. And you would want to be able to stop those. Let's help them a little bit. All the school shootings are terrible, terrible, and we need some sort of solution to that right away. But in a greater sense of things, the ability to go to war with your government is a fundamental part of the American Constitution that the Founding Fathers wanted, because remember, they were trying to recreate Rome, right? The Founding Fathers wanted all of the power and all of the success of Rome with none of the downfalls of Rome. And so that was why they created many of the rules that they made. They're like, how do we get this country to last longer than Rome did? And one of the First Amendment was free speech. The Second Amendment was to go to war with your own government. That was their second rule. So that shows you how important it was for them. It was very important. They considered it like a critical thing for you to be able to do. Am I about to die? I think my kitty, or somebody's kitty, just put her to sleep. They considered going to war with your own country an important thing for you to be able to do. Oh, this sucks. He's not pointing the right way. I'm on the wrong side. You're on the wrong side of history, mister. Brr. I'm not very political, but I do enjoy listening to TGC. I'm listening to All American Badass. The solution that only us non-American can seem... Oh, goddammit, the comment section's really moving. Hold on. The only solution that only us non-American can see is simple: cancel the Second Amendment. Right, I could get that. I can understand arguments for getting rid of the Second Amendment. The arguments would be something along the lines of being able to stop your country, your government is obsolete. In the future, you're not able to stop your government. You're not able to go to war with it because it's too powerful or something like that. And the bigger risk for you for peacetime is, the bigger risk is having school shootings. So that's what the basic argument from the left is. The bigger risk for you is school shootings, not a tyrannical government. And the concept here is that there can't be a tyrannical government. And yet North Korea exists, China exists, Venezuela exists. So you've got tyrannical governments today. They exist all over the world. Nice, we dodged it. They exist today. And the idea that it could never happen again in the West, it could never happen in Europe, it's naive is what it is. You and I live very short lives, right? We live for, 70 years. Mankind's been around for thousands of years. And when you look at what's happened over the thousands of years, tyrannical governments rise up all the time. Tyrannical governments rise up all the time. That is like all of human history, in fact. How did Nazi Germany come to power? How did Nazi Germany come to power? That was in Europe. World War I, World War II. It's a thing that happens. It happened not too long ago. It happened like one generation ago, guys. So we live today in 2020, and it's like we couldn't possibly conceive that ever happening again in the West. And it's like, is a position of naivety is what it is. It's a belief in the goodness of the world, and I don't have a belief in the goodness of the world. I have a belief in nature and power. Nature and power. Those are the real things that drive events to occur. You've got men and I guess women who are driven to power. They're not driven to be good people. They're driven to power. And it drives everything. Money, business, politics, invention even. It just drives everything. So power and violence is what keeps the world moving around. Not kumbaya, we can hold hands and kumbaya together if we want, but that's not what keeps everything moving. And so, I don't think everywhere in Europe even gets rid of guns. In Switzerland, don't they have the right to bear arms in Switzerland, right? I'm pretty sure they have that in Switzerland. I'm pretty sure in most first world countries in Europe and Australia, you can actually still own a gun. It's just harder to obtain it. So a lot of the discussion about gun rights in America come down to how difficult should it be for you to get a gun, not should we get rid of them entirely. So that's much of the conversation. But we only moved on to talking about gun rights because I was talking about the fact that people on the left and people on the right are at a point where they don't want to have a conversation anymore. They want to kill each other. I actually think that's true, by the way. I think that people on the left and on the right, they're not at a point where they want to have a discussion anymore. They want to attack each other. Just like I want to bring up the subject of finances and immigration, and Mike wants to call me a racist man. And that's a very big accusation, by the way. But it's reached that point, where we're no longer going to have any kind of productive discussion. So what do you move on to? Well, if you really think I'm an evil racist man, you need to get rid of me. And if I'm going to be gotten rid of, I'm supposed to fight back. That's where we're at. That's where we're at. Is really a disappointment. But I think it's just this thing that happens throughout time, over and over again for mankind. This is history. It's just what we do. We just go to war with each other all the time. No diplomacy, war. No diplomacy, war, all day. You aren't defeating any military with guns we can buy. So that was something that I actually believed as well. And over time, my opinion on that has sort of evolved, I'd say. My opinion on that has changed. Because one of the main things I didn't understand was that even the military plays a role. So your belief, your uninformed belief, is that the military will do what it's told, okay? That's the part where you're not understanding fully what an actual civil war would look like. So in an American civil war, if the military generals decide they don't like the current political leader, that's when the whole civil war begins. Do you understand? So that's where it all starts. And the actual military leaders are who the soldiers follow. They don't follow Trump. They don't follow Obama. They don't follow Hillary Clinton. They actually do what their generals tell them to do. So the generals reach a point where they're like, you know what, it's time for a coup. And let's say the military generals were split even. Let's say some of them like the politicians, some of them do not. But they decide it's time to go to war, it's time to act. This is when you as an armed citizen actually do play a role and do make a difference. Because it's much harder for the military to move throughout the country and capture key areas of, economic power, certain manufacturing areas, certain ports. The military can or can't do that based on how hard it is to move through those areas. And look at, perfect example, look at the Middle East. It's not like the terrorists in the Middle East or the rebels in the Middle East, it's not like they have a lot of advanced warfare. It's not like they have a bunch of awesome equipment, but how many trillions of dollars have we wasted in the Middle East? And how long have we been at war with people in the Middle East? It's been a long time. Okay, so the idea that just because the government has drones means that, yeah, it's going to be a nice, easy, fast war that they're going to win, that's actually incorrect. That is incorrect. So I initially believed that an armed country, citizens, I initially believed that they will never have a chance against the military, but my understanding that the military decides too whose side it's taking helped me understand that you do actually play a bigger role than you realize. Oh. There's nothing that has been spouted by this deadbeat that hasn't been, oh my god, regurgitated by the GOP. You talk as if the GOP is evil. You know, you realize the GOP is supported by half the country, right? You realize that, Mike. Well, how do you feel about the GOP, actually, Mike? Is the GOP an evil party? Let's grab this guy. You're spouting communist shit, so you don't really have the high ground, Mike. I'm just waiting for Mike to start asking for manager. Oh, guys. Dog, I hate the charge blade. Storing charges during a fight when raging is annoying. Hold on, let me drink. Oh, interrupted. Oh, interrupted again. Wow, Goldorathian must have a lot of life. The GOP runs on pillars of oppression and xenophobia. See, I don't even believe that. So I think that the GOP, the Republicans in America, have mostly ran on a belief that people are meant to govern themselves and meant to work hard and get a job. So that's what the GOP, technically that's what the GOP actually believes in. They believe in smaller government. They believed in probably a more conservative view of the country that might be more in tune with what the founding fathers wanted. And the liberals, they have a more, they call it a progressive point of view. I would call it a regressive point of view, because many of the ideas that they're trying have been tried throughout history for a long time, by the way. They're not as new as you think, these ideas. But they're more into increasing the amount of socialism in the country, which isn't necessarily wrong, by the way. It's just that it depends on your point of view. But right now, the Democrats believe in diversity is our strength, which I actually think is a deeply racist idea. Diversity is our strength is a racist idea. I believe that the free market should decide who comes in, and that's it. That's it. The free market asks, what are your skills? The Democrats ask, what is the color of your skin? And then they decide if you come in. That's extremely racist. The Democrats are into socialism. I'm open-minded to increasing the social welfare net. I think if you wanted to increase the amount of social welfare net you have to be careful not to be importing homeless people into your country. That was something Bernie Sanders believed in on his first presidential run, actually. He talked about the fact that you can't have open borders immigration and a strong social welfare net. He said that himself. And then in his second presidential run, he changed his tone. Most likely the reason he changed his tone is because he took a look at the voting demographics, the breakdown that he got during the Trump election. Remember, we were just talking about how the demographics actually do matter, because you can predict who votes how, and then you can change what you say in order to match that. But he initially said we can't have open borders because that makes no sense with strong social programs. If you had it working, oh, we got a Fuhrer, real nice. If you had it working that way, what would happen is every poor person in poor country would just import themselves into your country, and then you wouldn't be able to take care of them. You would become poor trying to take care of everyone else, trying to take care of the world's problems. And that's one of the struggles. So you have to control who comes in, and then when you have control over that, you can then offer generous welfare benefits to everyone. But you have to make sure that everyone's contributing. That's the only way it will work. That's basic finance, guys. If no one's contributing, but we're somehow giving out benefits to everyone, where does the money come from? Oh, it comes from nowhere. The government prints it, and then we go, $30 trillion into debt, which we're a huge debtor country. It's really sad. But that's essentially what happens. When the country is not productive enough to support all of its benefit programs, you go into debt. When you go into debt, you have even less money because not only is that all owed money, you pay interest on it too. That's why it's so bad to be in credit card debt. That's why it's so bad to have student debts. Why it's bad to have even a mortgage, by the way. So you don't want your country to have too much debt. You want the country's level of productivity to be higher than the amount of interest it pays on its debt. And America's not really doing that. So if you want to increase, social benefits, I'm totally open-minded to that. I think that we should definitely probably help young people with their social healthcare needs. Their healthcare needs. We should be open-minded to that. We should force hospitals to compete with each other for once. They should be forced to show their prices so that you can actually shop. You can't do that in America. It's really frustrating. But yeah, so the healthcare companies should be forced to have to show their prices. And I just, again, I'm open to increase in taxes. I'm open to more socialist programs. But it has to make sense. It has to be an investment. We can't offer more than we actually earn in a year. So if our country isn't productive enough to justify all of the handouts, how do we justify the handouts? All you're talking about is putting the country into more debt, which gets passed off to young people, which is you and me, by the way. Who, when the old people have bankrupted the country, which is exactly what happened, who then takes over the bankrupted country? Me and you. We take over the bankrupted country. So our job as young voters isn't to be, oh, who's going to pay for my car? Who's going to pay for my education? Our job is to ask the government and to ask the elderly not to hand off a bankrupted country to us. That is unfair. That's unfair. GDP is based on population. Well, it's a little more complicated than that, Pushpa. So GDP does increase when your population is larger, but when we're talking about whether or not the country goes into debt, you're talking about your GDP minus what you've spent on. So you can have a small country full of wealthy people and a non-bankrupted country. There's a great example of that would be like Switzerland. Why do you think diversity is a racist viewpoint? Thanks. That's a great question, Merck. So diversity versus the free market. A great example would be hiring somebody for a job. And let's say the conservative the capitalist or the free market economist, he asks, who will do this job the best for the lowest pay? All he's trying to do is become productive. That's the only thing he's trying to do. Could be a woman, could be a black woman, could be a Latino woman, it could be a white guy, could be anybody. The role could be filled by anybody. All a free market economist is asking is, who will do this job the most productively for the lowest pay? And he's trying to be productive. That's great. When you're productive, usually it means you found the person with the most skill, and that person ends up generating a bunch of money because they're so efficient at what they do. Now, the other person who has a diversity quota, what they say is they have a list of races. They say we'll have 10% white people, 10% black people, 10% Asians, 10% Latinos, 10%, right? Do you see where I'm going here? 10% people from the Middle East. We'll have 10% Arabs, right? So they have this list. And it is like cut into a pie, and they say you find a perfectly viable candidate, and he's done all the work, or she's done all the work of applying for the job and going to school, and they've got all the skills necessary. And then the person with the diversity quota looks at their quota and says, you're not the right race. We can't hire you. Do you see? So this is how it turns into racism. This is why diversity quotas are themselves racist. They claim to be for fighting racism, but they end up becoming racist anyways. Whereas the free market economist hires anyone regardless of their sex or race. It's only skill-based. It's a meritocracy. All right. Well, it has been the 2-hour mark. I think I'm ready to wrap up. Hope you guys found that conversation interesting. Mike says, without the high level of immigrants in our agriculture, we would have almost no homegrown exports, says Mike. Well, that's your assumption, Mike. Pushpa says, we pay tax in your country. Edgy says, Mike is some armchair intellectual. Mike says, the Democrats are a pile of talking heads that pretend to disagree with their friends. Release says, there isn't just agriculture. Alan says, do have the ability to mute people in chat. Oh, I could mute people in chat, but if people disagree with me, they're perfectly welcome to voice their disagreement. Bridget says, is anyone getting problems with chat? And I don't know. I'm not having any problems. But yeah, I am ready to wrap up. I'm ready to go open up some Pokemon cards. it is a delicate conversation to have, but I'm unafraid to share my opinion on these subjects because they're so important, honestly, and I feel that people should be less afraid to voice their opinion on it. Twitch says YouTube died. What? TGC YouTube dead, says Widowmaker. Oh snap! Hold on, let me try refreshing. YouTube dead, huh? Hold on. I guess I'll go ahead and wrap the stream up. Apparently there's some sort of problem occurring on YouTube, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap the stream up. I want to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.